So it's just going around tightening the hardware. All this hardware was pretty loose, so this is good. It'll help with stability and ground and everything. But then I was tightening the input jacks, and when I got to channel 2 input jacks, they're like missing a washer, or the cutout's too big, and they're actually like inset into this front panel, which is not great because it really, that's how it makes ground. So I might have to pull out that jack, add a washer, figure out what the fuck, and get that sorted out, because you can see it's supposed to, you know, tighten hard to the chassis like those ones. You know, we could de-rust those if you want, but they still tightened and threaded nicely, and we should be getting good ground there now on channel 1. But yeah, channel 2, you can see it's not flush with the chassis there. So we'll have to pull those out and see if we can figure it out. Yeah, so I've got that jack out, and you can see it's actually the brass control strip underneath that's bent at that location. So it's sticking in so that there's nothing for the see how there's nothing for the washer to rest on to then have the nut on to hold it tight with the chassis. It's because the brass panel's actually been bent, probably from a fall where there was a cable plugged into this input and it bent the strip. So I'm going to see if I can bend that back without having to remove every pot and every solder joint on it. But it's pretty important to have channel 1 input of your vibrato channel grounded nicely. So we'll see if we can make that happen. And there we go. Nicely mounted, tightened, making full contact. Managed to reform the metal at the back here a bit to make it so it was enough to tighten that nut into. So we're good. All right, I'm gonna get this tank out. And you gotta love it when you got one Phillips and one Robertson on the tank. Makes life easy. Also, this seems extremely long, and I would bet that if we looked on the bottom of the amp, which I'll do in a second here, that it probably went right through and was sticking out the bottom. Anyway, we'll try to get you a shorter Phillips screw so that it's easier and doesn't penetrate. We can fill that in if you want. Okay, hopefully you can see this spring tank here. Okay, hopefully you can see this spring tank here. So both springs are in it, but only one is actually is electrically connected. So maybe it's something that Dave could fix. But you hear that flutter? And then if I mute this longer spring, the looser spring, still get the flutter. And then if I mute the shorter spring, the one that's still currently active, nothing. No verb. So this spring is not doing nothing. And then mute this one. There's our flutter. So you get that real fluttery echo when you only have one working spring, which is what's going on here. But it's not the spring itself that's snapped or anything, but the transducer at one of the ends, I guess, is disconnected. But it's so miniature in there that takes specialized tools to even give it a try. So, new tank, or try taking it to Dave. I film this because it's happening again. So your tubes are red plating because there's something going on with your bias pot, or the bias, because we're now pulling 100 milliamp plate current, which is like dangerously hot and definitely going to destroy something. So I'm gonna work this pot and see if it goes back down, but we're gonna have to shut this amp off pretty quick if it doesn't go back down, basically right away. Yep. There. Wiggled the pot and it's back down. So there's something terrible going on with that pot. Yep, there it is again. Okay, I gotta clean that pot and check its ground. Because that's like tube destroying, fire starting situation right there. Okay, film it again because this is insane. This is the other side of your bias pot. This nut was just finger tight. So all of this mounting hardware needs to be checked because there's just been too many loose things. Yeah, like of all the things to be fucking tight, your bias supply cannot go away or tubes die, fires start. So that's fucking tight now. Okay, cleaned and lubed that bias pot and tightened the mounting hardware. So we should not get wildly fluctuating bias anymore. Let's turn on the amp and find out. Here comes the plate voltage. And here comes the bias. Okay. So the range on the pot is much more where it needs to be now too. So I think we're cool. I'll watch as I adjust the bias to see if the current draw goes wild again. No. That's me turning it up on purpose. That's maxed out. You saw before it was drawing over 100 milliamps. That's just insane. So there seems to be no, as I wiggle it and poke it, no fluctuations over here on the current draw. So I'll set it back to about 40. 16 watts. So, 55% plate dissipation on 6v6s. And I'll prod it a little more with the chopstick here, see if I can get it to fail again. But I can't. I think it was just bad ground from no good contact with the chassis on the other side, or maybe it was the cleaning. Either way, seems solid now, and you're not going to blow anything up or start any fires. So I've got you another Phillips screw with a washer like that one for the one over here. That's the right length, so we'll be poking through. I haven't checked underneath yet, but look at the old one, and that's what I'm going to put in. All right, so I think we're in pretty good shape now, except for the reverb tank. Bias pot seems to be holding up great now with the cleaning and tightening of the hardware and just general exercising of it. And, checking voltages from the schematic where, Yep. 190 on the V1 plate. 180 on the V2 plate. 410 at the second filter node, which is perfect. So yeah, V plus is good everywhere now. That's audio. Voltages are looking good. Cathode. Yeah. Look at this shared cathode for one sec. That's this guy. 1.4. That's good enough. Yeah. I would say this thing is ready to get a new reverb tank and play some gigs and report back, see if you want to go deep on anything. The only thing I didn't really look at is filter caps. I guess I'll flip it over and check that now. But the voltages are all good and clean, so I'm assuming they're fine and have been replaced reasonably recently. But I'll check that out too. Okay, so there's your filter caps, and they have been redone in February 2008. Which seems very recent until you do the math. That's 15 years. More. 17 fucking years ago. Anyway, upon inspection, they don't seem to be bulging or leaking or really looking suspicious, although one of them's got a little trauma. But not at the place where it usually matters, although it's on both ends. The screen node here, but it might just have been cosmetic. Usually any trouble happens when they bulge from the ends where the leads are in. There's even little vents on them sometimes, but there's nothing oozing out, and the work looks reasonably good here. And these resistors are in spec, so we'll leave the filter caps alone because voltages were all measuring good and things were, usually you'd get a 60 cycle hum or 120 cycle rather, pretty strong if filter caps are starting to go, so we'll leave them. These are good quality spray Adams from back in the day, so they should hold up for a while, but put that on the list too when you want to do a big, get it really road worthy for your world tour or something.